can remember, I have been completely obsessed with bats. Won't come as a shock to anyone who knows me. But today I'm going to talk about the fantastic world of bats, kind of the negative portrayal of bats in like the media and mythology and stuff, and why that needs to change. So without further ado, what comes to your mind when you think of bats? Now, because you guys are all scientists or interested in science in some way, you guys probably won't have these ideas, but to people that might not know a lot about it, there's kind of thoughts of vampires or rabies, which isn't entirely unfounded, but like Batman sometimes. And then you've got all this ridiculous nonsense that it's like, oh, they're going to get stuck in my hair, they're going to suck my blood, and they lay eggs. Someone said that. And to 6-year-old me, I could not understand it because I absolutely love bats and they were the best thing ever. I own pretty much every bat toy that's ever been in mass production. And so I just couldn't work it out. But all you need to do is type bats into the little, you know, the GIF button on Facebook Messenger? And you get this stuff, you know? It's like no wonder that people are so scared because the media constantly reinforces these negative, scary, dark images of these animals. And sadly, it's been scientifically proven that they took a group of undergrad students, they asked them to rate a load of endangered species, and bats, snakes and spiders were viewed as more negatively than other animals, which is a real shame, because bats are the best. So, why is this a problem? Why is it a problem that people are scared of bats? And why does that need to change? That's what I'm going to be talking about today. So, what's so good about bats? So, to start off, numbers. So, bats are in the order Chiroptera, which is the second largest order of mammals, which is around 1,300 species, which is mental, like, if you think about how much that contributes to our biodiversity of the planet. There's this great little pie chart, which basically shows just how much of the mammals are bats, and it's a huge amount. And you guys are all, you probably know a bit about biodiversity and why it's important, you know, it's insanely important. But just in case you've forgotten, you know, better food security, ecosystems can deal with disturbance, it's prettier when you go outside because every other animal isn't a cow. Nothing against cows, but still many, many more reasons. You know, biodiversity is this massive thing and bats contribute massively to that. Next, longevity. So this here is the Chinese god of longevity, and he's quite often pictured next to a bat or sometimes holding a bat. And with a good reason, because bats are like, oh, that's backwards. No, go forwards. Bats on average live 3.5 times longer for their size. So if you think about mice, about that big, over a certain amount, bats live 3.5 times longer. So, got a fun time. Who can guess how long the longest lived bat lived to? So, okay, hands up if you think it's longer than 10 years. Okay. Longer than 20. Keep it up. Longer than 30. Longer than 40? 41! It's awesome! It's this guy, the Brant's bat. We have them in the UK, they're awesome. Live to 41, it's about that big. How? It's incredible! And so these can be incredible study species when looking at ageing, and any of you that do sort of bioscience courses, you'll know just how much of a big deal in science at the moment ageing is. And yeah, so that's cool. Don't forget seed dispersal and pollination. So 300 different plant species rely on bats for seed dispersion. So here we have Artibius jamaicensis. I did the illustrations. This is going to be my study species for my third year project. I'm super excited. They're a fruit-eating bat, and obviously bats can fly, so they can disperse seeds like miles and miles away. And over here we have Basophagus saracina, which is a nectivorous bat. And when they drink from the flowers, the pollen gets stuck on the fur around their faces. And so they act basically like really, well, still small, but big bees. and yeah, so pollination's a really key thing. Does anyone like tequila? Because bats pollinate that too. This is Leptonic Terrace yerba bueno, and yeah, they pollinate agave, which is really important for making tequila. So, another good reason. And pest control. So, a single common pipistrel bat, we have them in the UK, they're the most common bat here, can eat over 3,000 insects a night. Can you imagine if that didn't happen? Because that would mean 3,000 more insects per night per bat. You know, you wouldn't be able to like walk out your door. It would just be like insect Armageddon. It would be terrifying. Not great. And so they've done a study on it. And if all bats were lost in North America, agricultural loss of $3.7 billion. That's an immense amount. And here is Ectesicus fuscus, which is the big brown bat, which has got the most simple common name ever. And these guys are a North American bat species. I'm going to talk a bit about North American bat species later, because they're having a tough time at the moment. And new scientific endeavours. So the most recent thing I've read is about Mexican fish-eating bats. And people are looking at the way they communicate and using that to inspire new ideas of how robots can talk to each other. And I put the link up there if people are interested to read more. It's just like, oh, that's new, I'll just put that in my talk quickly. And then there's this thing called the bat bot, which I kind of want one of these, which is so cool. And it's a robot that mimics the musculoskeletal system of a bat, and so has indirectly kind of taught us how bats actually achieve flight. And they're using it as a drone to go into areas deemed unsafe for humans, like old nuclear power plants and things. So that's really cool. And also, super cute. Look! So this is Ectophyla alba, the Honduran white bat, and they make these little tents out of heliconia plants, like banana palms and stuff. They're adorable. And then you've got like these guys, flying foxes. I think it's Pteropus polycephalus, but I'm not sure. But they're just so cute. And then there's pipistrel bats, which are small and squeaky, and we have them on campus. And then it's kind of, okay, that's a vampire bat, but they're still really, yeah, all right. I'm kidding, of course. This is Centurio senex, the wrinkle-faced bat, and I love them all. I have a blanket on my bed with like that face on because I love them so much. But yeah, fundamentally, bats need our help. So I don't know if any of you guys have read about this, but there's white nose syndrome, which is this deadly fungus sweeping through North America. It's thought to be brought over on sort of camping equipment and stuff, rock climbing equipment from Europe, and it's caused these mass die-offs in North American bats. It's like it infects and then wakes them up during their hibernation, so they burn off like really important fat reserves. That's how they think it's working, but there's still loads of new studies into it. So that's a huge problem. And the habitat loss, so migratory bats obviously travel these huge distances, and if they've got nowhere to land, nowhere to feed, they're just going to die of exhaustion, which is awful. And you know, habitat loss in general, loss of food, loss of places to stay, it's not great. And then there's the problem of direct persecution. So again, in areas where they might not be, this isn't such a problem in the UK because bats are so heavily protected, but in areas where they sort of believe in vampires a lot more, some caves are blown up with dynamite, or fires are lit in the caves at crucial points of the year of the bat's reproductive cycle to disturb them. And it's not great. And sometimes they are removed to perceived risks like fruit spoilage and tree damage, and whilst that sometimes can be true, if we keep sort of taking away the habitat, they're going to have nowhere else to go, and they're just so important. So basically, positive portrayal saves lives. So there's been loads of studies into kind of people's perceptions of animals, and like knowledge of an animal changes the way children perceive it, and they're going to take that information on, you know, because they're the future. And yeah, and when people are taught about, so this study was done on sharks. When people were taught more about sharks and they learnt more, they were more likely to conserve them, which is super important. And this has been shown to be the case in bats too. So the PCMM is this awesome charity in South America, run by Rodrigo Medellin, who's a bit of a legend of mine. This guy, and he's been taking the local community and educating them and getting them to look after their own bats and teaching the local children, and it's been shown that they're retaining the facts well, and yeah, people are now protecting the caves and stopping the vandalism. And you know, ultimately, if you think about ideas of like pollination and all the things I've spoken about before in pest control, if we look after the bats, we're almost indirectly looking after ourselves, because we've got better food security, better biodiversity, better place to live on the planet. So, in short, I want to see less of this nonsense, where bats are these evil creatures, and more of this. This is two CBeebies representations of bats, and it's just like, oh, they're so cute. And yeah, thank you very much. Any questions? Question?
How did you get into bats at like such a young age?
So when I was 2 years old, I watched this documentary. I have no memory of it, but my mum said that after that, like, everything changed, and it got to the point where I think it was like my nursery teacher took her aside one day and said, "Have you tried talking to Maisy about other animals?" And she just went, "We've tried." Yeah, and since then they're just the best. Yeah, just watched a documentary. But yeah, any other questions?
Do you think the portrayal in the media is changing? Like, no?
Yes, I would say so. So it's very subtle. But yeah, so I found out about like the CBeebies things. They're both really recent cartoons, because I have a half-sister, and I went round one day and I'm like, oh my god, it's a positive portrayal of a bat, this is amazing! So yeah, subtly little things are changing. But then, like, if you look at kind of the modern day Batman, where it's all like all these dark, spooky bats, and even though he's a good guy, it's still like, that's not maybe the best representation. But yeah, I would say that there is a slight change, but there needs to be more change. Everyone needs to love bats, basically. Yeah. Any more questions?
Oh, brilliant! Everyone give Maisy a round of
Thank
applause.
you.